There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock.
So, episode 93.
Yeah, episode 93, The Family Murders. This is, I don't really know much about this case, but Jenny's been researching it for several weeks
Oh, you're
now.
going to love this.
Yeah, this is good.
This is a rough one, you guys.
Oh, yeah, that's what you told me. I said, don't tell me anything about it. I want to hear about it, the night of the show.
Yeah.
But we're sitting back here, and I've made it's on a Saturday night. Normally we go out on a Saturday, but we have to go out on Sunday because we have a special thing.
Because it's Memorial Day weekend, yeah. So they're doing a Sunday night instead.
So I've made Jenny and I a couple of these fantastic things that we have here in the United States. I don't know, maybe you don't live in a country that has access to tequila. It's a great Mexican product.
You can have tequila everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I don't know, man. You can't have it in Saudi Arabia, so we don't know who's lives.
Well, that doesn't count.
Listening. So I made a couple of tequila sunrises, and we've just started on those, man. The sunrises are fantastic.
It's the only cocktail that I can tolerate tequila in because I don't like it otherwise.
So if you guys have anything that you want to pour for yourself at your location, go ahead and pause the show and make your favorite drink. It might be a mojito. Although it might be a beer. It might be anything.
Although it won't be Saturday for them because the show comes out on Tuesday afternoon.
Well, they can do it on Tuesday.
Don't drink on Tuesday afternoon.
You can drink on Tuesday afternoon.
You can drink on Tuesday night.
They can drink whenever they want to drink.
Yeah, true. You're adults. You can drink whenever you want to.
These things are fantastic, though.
They are very good, yeah.
This is that Margaritaville tequila. The price that they had for Cuervo, I wasn't going to pay $35 for that.
Well, you got a big thing.
This
of
is
like,
actually
this
really good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
This is really good.
And you can pretend you're Jimmy Buffett and you can sing along with except you're wasting away in Tequilaville instead of Margaritaville.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite work the same.
Beautiful. That taste of, I guess it's guava, I think.
It is very nice.
Nice.
So, yeah, totally. They did not pay us for this product placement.
No,
we just bought it because it was cheaper
They
than
didn't.
the others.
If you guys go get your tequila and make a sunrise.
Yeah. So, what are we going to do? We're going to do the shout-outs first. We did a review. Our last movie review was Phantasm 2.
Yeah, that seems to be pretty popular.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked that out, go check that out.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted to mention again our Zazzle store, which is at zazzle.com/13 o'clock, and we have shirts and a tote bag. Also, I want to mention our Patreon page, like I usually do, which is patreon.com/13 o'clock podcast. And also, we have a blog, 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a link in the sidebar to a PayPal account if you would like to make a one-time donation. I would also like to say thank you to Michael, who was one of our Patreon supporters, and he recently increased his support.
Oh, did he?
So thank you for that, Michael. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Awesome.
And so I think other than that, like I said, I usually mention my book, The Faceless Villain. I'm still working on, I know I say this every week, but I am really working on the second volume. It's just taking longer than I thought.
Yeah, it's going to be a big book.
But it will be, Well, I went through the other day and was like doing word counts and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, well, I still have 7 chapters to go. And it's already longer than the first volume. I think it's going to be at least 500 pages, if not more.
I think the fans will enjoy it.
And the audiobook will probably be like 15 hours long.
Yeah, but they'll get more for their money.
I know. Well, I found so much stuff. It's just like, you know what I mean?
Put it in there. If you found it,
you go down the rabbit hole of murders. It's like really, it's kind of depressing.
That would be an awesome
The
book.
rabbit hole of murders.
Going down the rabbit hole of murders. That's an awesome book title.
There's just more. Yeah. The more you look. And like, I think you said it before. It's just like so many murders.
So many murders. That's going to be another book. So many murders.
Those are going to be my next one. I'm going to put in all the ones I forgot because I'm sure there's a bunch I left out. And there were some that I had to leave out because there wasn't like a lot of information about them and stuff.
I think our next movie review, I think I'm going to do Blackula.
Yeah.
Blackula and Scream, Blackula, Scream.
Yeah, because we got the Scream Factory Blu-ray that has both of them. It's the double feature.
That's right. And if you guys want to get a head start, go ahead and get that now. You can get that on eBay, both movies.
I love those two movies.
Yeah.
I really do.
And it's Scream Factory Blu-ray. So, man, the transfer quality is really good. Lots of extras. And those movies are some straight up good vampire movies. They influenced Anne Rice. And, when she wrote her Vampire Chronicles. So they're good movies. I liked them. And we're going to get more into them when the review comes up.
Yeah, so that'll probably be our next one.
Probably one after this, yeah.
now that we've done that, let me do the news story. And like I said, before we get into the family murders, and like I said, I wanted to do the family murders not only because someone requested it, but also because remember back on, I don't remember what episode it was. It wasn't, I think it was episode 89 maybe, where we did the Wanda Beach murders and the disappearance of the Beaumont children, two very famous unsolved mysteries from Australia. And this case is like tangentially related to those two.
Okay.
So I actually, while I was researching those and they were in my book, I kept coming across this one.
All right.
And so the more I read about this, I'm like, oh man, I got to do a whole show about this. This is fucked up.
Okay.
So that's what we're going to do. But before we do that, I want to do the news story, and we'll do a true crime related news story. Now, this was something that normally I would do like a Golden State Killer update on a true crime show. There's not really anything new with him. He's not really talking or doing anything like that. However, I found this story in the Palm Beach Post. It's dated May 22nd, and evidently they have used the exact same reverse genealogical technique that they used to catch D'Angelo.
You're right.
They have caught another murder suspect from an old cold case using the exact same thing. And this was in Washington State, and it was a double murder from 1987. It was a girl named Tanya Van Coilenberg. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She was 18, and it was her and her boyfriend, Jay Cook, who was 20. And they were going to Seattle in their van. They were going to get some furnace parts for, I think it was her dad's business or something. So they were going on a business trip, and they disappeared. Yeah. And then a few days later, they found her body. She'd been raped and murdered. And then I think a day or two after that, they found his body too, and he'd been beaten and strangled or whatever, and they found him wrapped up in a blanket, and they didn't know who did it all this time. It happened in 1987. Well, they decided that they were going to use this genealogical technique, so they did the exact same thing that they did in the D'Angelo case and the Golden State Killer case. They basically took the DNA from the old cold case files, they uploaded a profile to an open source genealogy website. They identified matches that were probably great-grandparents. Right. And then they reverse engineered back, and luckily for them, they found this couple, and this couple had one son, and that was the match. Right. So then they did the same thing. They staked out this dude's house. They got a cup and a couple things that he had thrown away that had his DNA on it, and they picked him up and matched him. So they finally caught this person, allegedly. He hasn't been convicted yet. His name is William Earl Talbot II. Okay. 55-year-old man from Seattle. Now, they're only booking him, and I thought it was kind of strange, they're only booking him for one count of murder, for the girl's murder. Right. So I don't know if they didn't have enough to pin the guy's murder on him, too, because obviously if he killed the girl, he probably killed her boyfriend, too, I would imagine. But, I guess they're only going to do what they have solid evidence of. Yeah. And I think, when we get into talking about the family murders, some similar shit happened there. Okay. Sometimes it's frustrating because you're sitting there thinking, well, obviously must have been who done it because of this, that, and the other thing. But if you don't have enough evidence, then you know that it can't. Yeah, right. You can't get a conviction. What are you going to do about it?
Jenny and I were talking about this. I don't really believe that they should be taking DNA from people at birth. I think it's unconstitutional, at least under the U.S. American Constitution. But could you imagine the business potential to where you could, let's say you start a company that can get a contract from the government. And what you do is, what your company does is it puts out rewards. Everybody gives their DNA to this thing. All right. And they give you $100 a pop for your DNA. And then they promise you a $10,000 bounty if your DNA leads to an arrest of an unsolved murder. Imagine that. I bet you you'd get a lot of people signing up for that, and I bet you'd get a lot of unsolved cases.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah. Like I said, I don't think they should be able to take your DNA or use your DNA without you knowing about it, without your permission, because that's your DNA.
But if somebody wants to sell their DNA.
But yeah, if they say, hey, we'll give you X amount of dollars if you willingly will give your DNA, and with the understanding that it might be used to solve crimes.
Some kind of crime, right.
And stuff, I think that people would probably do that. I would do that.
Yeah, well, somebody said, look, we'll pay you $500 for your DNA, and if it leads to an arrest, we'll give you $10,000 bonus.
I bet a shitload of people would do that.
All right.
I would do that.
Sure, it would end up, it would make like a network, a big crime dragnet over the country to where you'd be able to pinpoint a lot of offenders.
And also, it might, in a little sidebar, it might actually discourage people from committing crimes because they're thinking,
oh, shit. They're like, man.
Well, even if you didn't give your DNA, you don't know if your relatives did.
Right.
So, they could still get your ass.
So you might be like, I was going to do this, but I don't know. Maybe
I better not.
Maybe some of my cousins have given DNA. Boy, they'd find me.
Yeah.
So, it might be a good deterrent.
It might have a disincentivizing effect. Sure. Yeah. So, I don't know. But like I said, as long as it's done voluntarily, I don't really have a problem with that. So, evidently, they've caught this guy. Like I said, it's allegedly. He's not convicted yet. But they do think that he was responsible for this double murder from 1987. And so that's pretty cool that they did that. So I'm imagining now that this technique has been so successful that they're probably going to use it to solve a lot more of these cold cases, which means that's kind of awesome. Which means maybe if I write more books later on, I'm not going to have so many to pick from because they'll have actually solved them.
Yeah. I tell you what, though.
What?
This tequila sunrise is kicking ass.
It is very good.
Yeah, it's very nice. Okay.
What? Oh, you've already drunk half of it.
Hey, I'm a man.
Okay.
Right?
Well, I was talking, so I couldn't drink it.
I understand. Okay.
Okay, so let's get into talking about the family murders. This happened in Australia in the late 70s to early 80s. I'm actually kind of surprised. I mean, it's very well known in Australia. I'm kind of surprised that it's not better known in the United States because, seriously, the stuff that this person or people did to the victims, this is really among the most fucked up shit ever.
You told me to prepare myself.
It's messed up
because this involves kids.
Yeah, teenagers.
Yeah, okay.
So it's pretty unpleasant.
You got all the details and everything. You can tell us. All right.
Yeah.
All right then. I'm ready. I'm bracing myself. Brace yourself, people.
Yeah.
Is it? Hold on 1 second. Can this be as bad as that damn necrophilia episode you did?
It's a different kind of bad.
Okay, all right. Because I walked out on that one.
I know.
All right. Okay.
That's still actually one of my favorite episodes we did just because that was so funny. So this took place in Adelaide, which is in South Australia. Now, let's preamble this a little bit because in 1972, there was kind of a big thing. Now, in Australia at the time, homosexuality was still illegal. And something that the cops at the time, the Vice Squad cops would do, they were supposed to go around like rounding up gay people and stuff like that. But usually instead what they would do is they would beat them up.
Right. It was cheaper.
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay.
So in 1972, evidently there were 2 or 3 members of the Vice Squad, and they targeted these 2 gay men by the Torrens River, which was kind of, a gay meetup spot.
Right.
They beat the shit out of both of them and threw them into the river. One of the men...
It's bad when the cops are after you.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the men got out. He had a broken leg. The other guy did not get out. He drowned.
Yep. Damn.
The guy who died was George Duncan.
Okay.
He was a doctor. He was actually a law lecturer.
Right.
He had only just moved to Australia like a month or 2 before.
Yeah.
So he drowned. And there was such a public outcry about this. I mean, I guess it had been going on for a long time, but people were kind of turning a blind eye or whatever. But now, these vice cops actually killed a dude.
Yeah. Well, it's good that there was an outcry. I mean, come on. I mean, don't these cops have something better to do? Who cares if these dudes are getting off on each other?
That's what I mean.
Who cares?
I don't understand why I don't understand why
That's
anyone
their business,
would care.
Man.
Right.
Grown man can do what he wants to do. If that's what he wants to do, let him do it, man.
Yeah.
Who cares? I don't understand it.
No, I don't either. So evidently there was such an outcry about this that it actually led to South Australia being the first state or the first region of Australia to decriminalize homosexuality because of the kind of furor that came in the wake of that.
Yeah, it snapped them out. It snapped them out of it. They realized, wait, no, this is kind of fucking dumb.
Yeah, this is fucked up. What are we doing?
That's like something from the 1800s.
Yeah.
It was a holdover.
Now, the interesting thing, too, about this particular case. Okay, remember I said George Duncan drowned.
Yeah.
The other guy, whose name was Roger James, a passerby helped him out of the water and drove him to the hospital.
Yeah.
This passerby was a guy named Bevan Spencer von Einem.
Okay.
Bevan Spencer von Einem will become very important to this story later on.
Oh, shit.
So it's very weird to me that he kind of, in 1972, he helps this guy get out of the water and everything like that.
You tell me this dude's a real villain.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So let's go forward a couple of years.
That goes to show you that even a real villain can sometimes do something good.
Yeah, see, everyone's in a morally gray area.
Yeah,
it's pretty creepy. So homosexuality was decriminalized in 1975. And then it was kind of like, some gay bars opened up or clubs that were friendly to gay people and stuff. So there kind of became more of an open scene.
Right.
Here we are in 1979. And here's this guy named Alan Barnes. Now, sources vary. Some say he was 16, some say he was 17, but he was about that age. So he still lived with his parents. His parents were English. And he kind of hung out. I don't know if he was gay specifically or if he just kind of hung out, because some of the clubs were not straight up. Like there was a club called the Mars Bar in Adelaide that was a gay club, but there were some other ones called like the Duke of York and stuff that weren't just gay bars, but they were like gay friendly. So he hung out at a lot of those places. So June 16th 1979, so Alan Barnes, he's staying over with his friend and they're hanging out. I mean, they kind of went out clubbing and stuff like that. Now on Sunday, they're going to go hitchhike back to where Alan lives. And, a lot of people were hitchhiking. It was the 70s. So they're hitchhiking and they're on this big main road in Adelaide. They weren't really having any luck. And they're like, well, maybe we should split up because, a hitchhiker doesn't want to pick up two guys,
right.
Because they're going to have to go all over the place and drop us off. So they split up. Now, his friend evidently got home. Alan Barnes disappeared. Now, Monday, his parents were kind of freaking out and they're like, we really need to call the police. So they call the cops. So as they're asking around, they have a bunch of witnesses come forward and said, oh yeah, we saw that guy on, I think it's called Grand Junction Road, is like the main road there through Adelaide. They said, yeah, he was hitching a ride. They saw him getting into a white car, which was a Holden sedan, and that there were 2 or 3 other people in the car. And that was pretty much the last time he was seen. Now, a week later, June 24th, there were some people hiking up in the Adelaide foothills, and at the bottom of a bridge, something called the South Para Reservoir, I think it's called, they saw something on the ground, and they said it looked like a body, except really contorted. Evidently, someone had tried to dump him off the bridge, but I guess they'd missed. They wanted it to go in the water,
right.
But it just fell in the dirt, and I guess they didn't even notice or something, and then
probably
they just
did
took
it
off.
at night, so they didn't see.
Yeah, so this is Alan Barnes, obviously. They figure he's been dead for a couple of days before he was dumped. Now, it looks as though he has been held captive and that he has been tortured and beaten. His cause of death was blood loss from an anal injury.
Damn.
They think that whoever killed him took something like a bottle, they're not really sure what it was, like a very large bottle or something, and just repeatedly put it in his anus until he bled to death from the injuries. But yeah,
that's terrible, though.
So that's how he died. So, while they're doing the autopsy, they also found some chloral hydrate in his bloodstream, along with alcohol. There was also a drug called Noctec, which was an over-the-counter, like a sleep aid. So they think that probably someone had drugged his drink.
Do they have any idea how long he was held?
Well, he was found a week later. He was probably held about 3 or 4 days.
Damn.
Oh, wait, it gets worse.
Okay.
Not, with this, that's bad enough, but like some of the later victims, it was like much longer. They also think that someone had washed his body. They never found the clothes that he'd been wearing when he disappeared, but when they found his body, he was wearing different clothes.
Right. Like
someone else had dressed him, and the clothes were clean and everything like that.
They were keeping him somewhere as a prisoner, and they took his original clothes and were dressing him.
Yeah.
Or giving him stuff to wear.
Yeah. Now, at first, no one thinks serial killer or anything because this seems like a personal crime. I mean,
like it's somebody who knew him.
Like it's somebody that knew him. So pretty much the police are concentrating on that. So they're kind of interviewing everybody he knows and friends and things like that. Now, 2 days after his body was found, someone calls the cops anonymously and says, look into a guy named Bevan Spencer von Einem. He killed Alan Barnes. And the cops were kind of like, yeah, okay, we'll look into that when we have time. Because at this point,
they have a lot of guys.
Well, yeah, and plus they're still thinking at some point that this is someone that knows him, and they're pursuing that avenue of investigation. So the next victim that turned up dead was named Neil Muir, and he was 25. Now, he was more of a, he had an apartment in the middle of Adelaide, but he was kind of a little bit of a drifter. He had been a heroin addict.
Yeah.
And then he went to a clinic and got on methadone, and then he got addicted to that. And then he stopped taking methadone and apparently went back on heroin.
Now, one of the things I'm noticing with these guys as you're talking about them and looking at the photographs of them, they all have long blonde hair.
Yeah, although...
Or the ones that I'm seeing.
Just the ones you're seeing. Really, there didn't really seem to be a particular physical type.
Okay.
Not really.
Okay.
It was just like whoever happened to cross their path, really.
Okay.
But so, this guy, he was, like I said, he was a little bit older. He was 25. He kind of looked like a little bit of a rock star. He had tattoos and long hair and stuff.
Yeah, they look like guys that maybe would be in the band Judas Priest or something like that.
Yeah.
KK Downing coming at you.
Yeah. Now, again, they don't actually know if Neil Muir was gay. There were some rumors that he was a prostitute, but he might have just been doing that for drug money.
Right.
They said he did hang out with gay people and hung out at like the Duke of York, and there was another place called The Buck. But those were not gay bars per se. They were just like gay friendly establishments. So it doesn't matter, but I'm just saying that they're not really sure. So evidently the last time that he was seen alive was August 27th, 1979. And he actually got kicked out of a bar because he was too drunk and messed up on drugs, and a bouncer kicked him out of a bar, and he just kind of went staggering off down the street, and no one ever saw him again.
Yeah.
Well, not alive, anyway.
Right. It's just setting the scene for me that you got like a sexual predator, the guy who's... He's going after younger guys who are involved in drugs and in the club scene, and anybody, if you get too screwed up or messed up around him, he's going to get you. That's what I'm seeing, or based on what I'm seeing so far.
Well, like I said, the first two victims were.
Right.
The rest of them, not so much. Now, they actually found his body the next day, and it was found by a couple of fishermen, and it was in the Port Adelaide River, and they were out fishing, and they saw 2 garbage bags. Evidently, whoever had dumped them, again, they had wanted them to go in the river and go out to sea or whatever, but they kind of missed, so they were sort of just on the shore. Now, they open up the trash bags, and this is horrifying, what they did to this guy. So, basically, he was cut up into a bunch of different parts. All of his internal organs had been scooped out and were gone. His legs and arms had been cut off and crammed into his torso, into his empty torso. His head had been cut off, and then whoever this was had taken a rope and had put it through his mouth and through the neck hole of the head, and then tied the head to the torso.
Right.
And then he had crammed all of it into this bag.
Okay, well,
they had also cut off all his tattoos and thrown them into the thing.
Yeah.
They had cut his penis, and they had cut off one of his testicles and kept it because they never found the other testicle.
Right. Sounds to me like they're trying to make him more compact.
That too, but the keeping of the testicle and the cutting off of the tattoos, that seems like sexual motive.
No, I think cutting the tattoos off may have been to try to hide his identity.
But then they put the skin with the tattoo in it, yeah.
Okay, weird.
And they kept one of the testicles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you shoot a deer in the field, if you're going to transport it, you usually would do what you call field dress it. You remove the intestines. If you do that, it lightens the body a lot.
Well, yeah.
So if his intestines were scooped out, it was probably mostly having to do with lightening the body.
But like I said, some of this stuff seemed...
And they're probably trying to make him small and compact to put him into a smaller container not to attract attention, which tells me there may have been neighbors around where he was killed. That's just what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have neighbors, you don't have to worry about the size of the body. You can just sling him over your shoulder and throw him in the back of a trunk. They're trying to keep this low profile, I think. I don't know why they cut the tattoos off and then just threw it back in the bag. That seems to defeat the purpose.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
I mean, a lot of them will knock the teeth out.
Yeah, I know.
Take fingertips off so you can't get any fingerprints from them, Just weird.
Well, like I said, the fact that, his penis and testicles had been mutilated, and like I said, they know at least one of the dudes that did this. Yeah. He did get caught. So this is sexual sadism is what this is.
So this was done. A lot of this was done while he was alive?
I'm not actually really sure. They said that he died the same way that Alan Barnes had died, by having something very large inserted into his anus, and which caused him to bleed to death. So he was killed the same way.
Damn.
So even with that connection, the cops seem to focus more on Neil's drug problems. And they said, well, maybe he was in debt with a drug dealer that had him killed.
What year was this again?
1979.
Damn, 79?
79.
Didn't they know better back then?
I guess not, but I said...
This is obviously the hallmarks of a sexual sadist.
Yeah.
You don't do that over drug debt.
Right, exactly. So they were kind of going through all his drug buddies, all his connections in that kind of way. Now, they didn't really get anywhere there, obviously, because that's not who did it. Now, interestingly, after Neil Muir was killed, the investigators actually finally followed up on the anonymous tip to interview Bevan Spencer von Einem. They went to his house and asked him about Neil, and he said that he did know Neil and that he and Neil had in fact had a sexual relationship 4 years previously. He said, I saw him a few days before the murder, but he didn't say he had anything to do with it. Another thing too that might have not put Bevan on the radar was that they had this other guy that they were looking at. And this guy was a doctor, Peter Millhouse. And they had kind of found him through Neil's friends and acquaintances and stuff, had kind of come back to this one guy. So Peter Millhouse, they had a couple different callers that called in and said that Millhouse was probably the one that had killed him, or he was the one that had supplied him drugs. So they think he was a gay man. He was an alcoholic. He lived in North Adelaide, and he drove a white Holden sedan similar to the one that Alan Barnes was seen getting into. And after Neil Muir was murdered, evidently Dr. Millhouse kind of went off on went on a rager, he was all alcoholic and stuff. And finally he hit rock bottom and he had to go into rehab. While he was in rehab, police started investigating him and building a case against him. And a bunch of people at the local bars in Adelaide said, yeah, we saw Dr. Millhouse with Neil Muir a bunch of times. And they seemed really close. So now they're thinking this guy is the killer. So he actually, also when they searched his house, they found trash bags and rope that were similar to what had been found when they found Neil's body. So, it was all circumstantial. Yeah. But it seemed like he was kind of guilty. So they arrested Dr. Millhouse. And weirdly, even though they have many witnesses that have seen Dr. Millhouse and Neil Muir together on multiple occasions, he says, I don't know that guy. Right. But the thing is, they have the trial and he gets off. He gets acquitted. Because there's just not enough evidence. It was all circumstantial. They pretty much the only thing, they found the trash bag. Yeah, they found the rope. They're in his house, there was kind of something on the bathroom floor that might have been blood. Right. That had been cleaned up with chemicals and stuff. But they couldn't pin anything on him.
That's the thing. They're always looking for blood and kinds of stuff. I've cut myself around the house before. It's been my blood.
Well, that's what I mean.
What the hell happened?
Right. Well, that's
somebody was bleeding here. What about every time I've thawed out hamburger and dropped some hamburger blood on the floor? I mean, what do they do about stuff I'm not a big believer in.
Well, that's
now,
why.
If you go to the crime scene, there's blood splatter all over the ceiling.
Right. That's something else. Of course. But that's what I mean, and that's probably why he got acquitted, because they were the defense could argue that could have come from anywhere. Somebody, he might have just cut his hand, or somebody could have come over and cut themselves. Right. That's why you really, really need solid evidence in this kind of case, and they just didn't have it, And I don't know if that dude was involved or not. I kind of suspect maybe he was, but they couldn't pin it on him, so he actually got off. After that, a couple of years went by before the next victim turned up, and this kind of took a different kind of turn, other than the first two victims. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a break right now.
I could use a break.
You could? Of
course I could use a break. I want another tequila sunrise.
Oh, you're out.
I'm out, man. Yeah, it was drink number 1.
Okay. So while you guys are listening to commercials, he's going to go make another tequila sunrise.
And you guys are welcome to make another drink for yourself. It's a Saturday night for us. We work on Saturday night.
We work all the time.
We work all the time anyway.
Yeah. Well, I do.
Entertaining you people and writing books is a full-time job for us.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah,
it's more for Jenny though. I sit back and I just get.
You just take
credit for shit.
Yeah, you do. Well, at least you admit it.
Yeah, it's all fun and games. Well, it's me and you cooking up a lot of these plans to come up with these products and, how
Yeah,
to
that's
sell
true.
this and what is the fan, but what do they want, and,
Yeah.
communicating with the people that buy your books and listen to the show, We love these motherfuckers. What are you talking about? We love these motherfuckers.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, of course we do.
He's getting so hammered already.
Yeah, I'm about there. I wish every one of you was over here right now, man.
We should do that one time.
One of these days, locals, we're going to have like a live show. We'll do a live show and we'll all have something to drink and then we'll put it up.
That would be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
We have to. I mean, I know we have some fans in Florida.
Yeah.
Or that are close
They can come
by.
to the house. I don't care.
Yeah, we got room.
Yeah, we got room.
All right. So we're going to take a break right now and he's going to go make another drink and then we'll be
Yeah.
back and talk more about this horrible, horrible case.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and we are back, and I am enjoying the effects of tequila.
Yep, he got a refresher.
Yes, if I start not making any sense, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't.
I'll just look at you all
just look
weirdly.
fine, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to try to make sense. It's going to be good.
You're still making sense so far.
Okay, good.
All right. So the next victim, like I said, this one is a little different. The first two, older guys, kind of hung out in the club scene, stuff like that. This was a 14-year-old boy.
Oh shit, he's going that young? Mm-hmm. Damn, all right.
His name is Peter Stagneff. Now, this happened on August 27th, 1981. Peter decides on that day he's going to skip school and go hang out with his friends. He's 14.
Damn, that's about how old I was in 91 or 81. About that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was 9.
Yeah.
But, so he decides he's going to skip school. So he pretends to go to school in the morning. And then at some point during the day, he comes back to the house and stashes his backpack, like he hides it in the garage. So his parents don't see it.
It's the oldest trick in the book, yeah.
So he first goes to a place called Tea Tree Plaza and hung out with some people he knew there. And then he was going to walk up to this place called the Rundle Mall, and he was going to meet his friend Daniel, and they were going to hang out. Well, Peter never showed up. So later on, his parents come home, and after Daniel told them, hey, we plan to skip school today, and then they found his backpack in the garage and stuff, and then, he never came home. So then his parents are like, oh shit, he must have got abducted, so they call the police. Right. Now, they actually did not find him for a very long time. And in the meantime, there was another victim. This other victim was named Mark Langley. He was 18 years old. Now, on February 27th, this was 1982, he was at his friend's 18th birthday party. Some of his family members were there with him and stuff. But at some point, his family members left, And he stayed there so he could go hang out with his friend Ian and Ian's girlfriend Paula. So they're driving around in the car. Evidently, at some point, they have a stupid argument about whatever. He gets out of the car and starts walking. And Ian and Paula take off in the car. But then after a few minutes, they're like, oh, well, we better go get him. So they turn around and go get him, but he's gone. 9 days later, they find Mark Langley's body in the Adelaide foothills. He still had on the clothes that he had been last seen in, other than the only thing I think that was missing was maybe his undershirt, and he had like a silver necklace.
You said 9 days?
Yeah.
Damn, okay.
He had like a silver necklace that had his horoscope sign on it. His cause of death was the same, blood loss from an anal injury. His body had been washed, his clothes had been washed before he had been dumped. Now, the creepiest thing about this that hadn't happened to the other victims. During the autopsy, they found right between his belly button and his groin was a surgical scar, like a new one.
Yeah.
Now, they think what happened was that whoever did this, they were, jamming things up his rectum.
Damn.
And something got stuck up in there and they had to cut open his belly to get it out because they were afraid that it had their fingerprints on it.
Wow. They did it while he was alive.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Because it had been cut and stitched back up.
Okay.
So that's what they're thinking. This had to be somebody with medical knowledge.
Right.
Which they were kind of thinking before just because from the way that like Neil Muir's body was cut up with a saw.
Right.
They were kind of thinking this is somebody. And now this is like a real surgical procedure that had like the stitches, it had surgical tape and everything on it. And they think that, they're not positive because they weren't there,
but done while he was alive.
Yeah. But they think that that's probably why that was done because something got stuck up in his intestinal tract and they had to get it out.
Why didn't he just wait till the dude was dead and kill him and then get it out after he was dead?
I don't know.
He must have intended to keep him for a while.
Well, yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, that was special. The thing is, though, it's that it seemed like that he had been killed only a day or two after he was taken. Right. Because some of them they kept longer, but like it didn't really seem like because he had been out in the foothills for a while.
Like something that was done by more than one guy.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna get to that.
Okay.
Now, as I said before, and this is another case where there was chloral hydrate found in his system. There was alcohol in his bloodstream that was 4 times the legal limit. And he was an 18-year-old kid. They also found a drug called Mandrax, which probably in the United States better known as Quaaludes. They actually, and this would actually end up being important because I'm not sure if the drug was legal or if it was just kind of over the counter at the time, but because in the 70s, Mandrax had become so notorious for being a date rape drug that eventually the government stepped in and regulated it. So they said, well, you can still prescribe it, but we have to have your name on record because we want to know who's got this shit.
So that's why they're suspecting a doctor. This is somebody who can get this stuff with a prescription.
Or somebody that takes it. Somebody that has a prescription for it.
And that's weird. So they're using drugs or drugging them up to make them more compliant.
Yeah. Well,
which means that they're not tied up during the abuse. Probably. They're probably free, but just really intoxicated.
Yeah, I don't think they ever found like any ligature marks or anything like that. Right. So I'm assuming they probably just kept them drugged up because some of the victims had like 4 different drugs in their system. Right. Sleeping pills, Quaaludes.
Pretty zombified.
Right. Now, a few months after Mark Langley was killed, they actually ended up finding Peter Stagneff's body, the 14-year-old.
Yeah, right.
Now, he had been left on this farm, and they found him because the farmer was clearing his fields. He was doing a controlled burn of his fields to get the, fields ready for spring. The fire actually burned the body.
Okay.
So that's how they ended up finding it. So unfortunately, they couldn't get a lot of forensic evidence off of Peter Stagneff's body because it had been burned. So they couldn't tell cause of death. They couldn't tell if he had the drugs in his system or what have you. Which
and
was
how,
kind of, and
how
that,
long after this, had he been missing for how long?
I think more than a year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so all they could figure out from his body was that, and the reason that he was linked to the other victims was because it looked like the same saw had been used to cut him up, because his body was cut into 3 pieces. Now, the next one, and the last one that they know of, the 5th victim, his name was Richard Kelvin, and he was 15 years old. Now, he was actually kind of a higher profile victim than the others because his dad was Rob Kelvin, who was a very well-known newscaster. Richard Kelvin is at a park with his dad and his friend Boris, They're kicking around a soccer ball, having a good time. Rob Kelvin, the dad, he goes home, and then Richard walks Boris to the bus stop. And they're kind of chatting at the bus stop. Boris gets on the bus and leaves. At this point, Richard is only about, some sources say 60 meters, some say 400 meters. He was very, very close to his house, but he never made it there. Somebody got him in between.
Wow.
So at first, the cops were like, well, maybe he just took off. He's a 15-year-old kid, whatever. But then a bunch of neighbors came out and said, no, we heard, like right around 5:30, 6:30 p.m., which is right about when he would have been abducted. They're like, we heard someone shouting and screaming. They're like, we heard a kid and we heard several voices, including a high-pitched voice that might have been a woman's. And they're like, and then we heard a really loud car exhaust and like a car taking off. And it was kind of at this stage that because of the witness testimony that we heard several voices and someone, getting into a car and stuff like that. At this point, they're finally thinking this is a group of people abducting these
Because I'm thinking,
boys.
you know what I mean? That he's got more than one of them at one time. Some of these guys are 18-year-old kids in the prime of their lives. That's warrior age. Those dudes can fight a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a middle-aged guy probably doing this. All right, because he has the financial means and the medical skill.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Got to be a group.
Well, yeah.
And at least two is really what...
Well, and I should note, too, that witnesses, when the first victim, Alan Barnes, some witnesses reported seeing him getting into a white Holden sedan that had 2 or 3 people in it other than the driver.
Right. So you're almost talking about a sex cult. That's what I'm thinking.
That's pretty much what people think this is.
Right.
So they didn't find Richard Kelvin's body for 2 months. He was found by a family that were out looking for rocks, in this forest. And he was still wearing the same clothes he had been wearing when he disappeared. He had also been wearing a dog collar. It was because, and people thought that was weird, but they said no because...
Not in those days.
Well, no. It was just because him and his dad and his friend were at the park and he's like, oh, I'm going to put on the dog collar, like for a joke.
So it wasn't punk rock.
No. It's, yeah. He was just doing it because he thought it was funny.
Right. We know all kinds of people wear dog collars at the club.
Well, yeah. Right. But yeah, it wasn't that. He was just doing it to be funny. And it was weird because when they found his body 2 months later, they had put the dog collar back on him. And he'd been gone for 2 months. Now, this is horrifying because they think that he was kept captive for about 5 weeks. And they found all kind of drugs in his system.
Right.
That Mandrax stuff, Noctec.
Keeping his ass zombified so he couldn't escape.
Yeah.
And then he would go along with whatever's going on.
Yeah. Other than that, they also found Valium, Rohypnol.
Yeah.
All kind of stuff. So at this point, they're like, okay, well, all of these must be related because pretty much all of these drugs.
This is somebody with means to come up with all these drugs.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is that they're like, okay, well, these drugs have been found in the system of at least 3 of the victims. And Mandrax particularly was regulated because, like I said, it was Quaalude. Yeah. It had been used as a date rape drug. So they kept track of everybody that was prescribed it.
Right.
So they painstakingly went through the records of everyone that had been prescribed Mandrax. Right. It was usually prescribed as a sleeping pill. Interestingly, one name that popped up was Bevan Spencer von Einem. And they're like,
that was that other guy.
That guy.
Right.
So this guy has to be involved. And then later on, they had this guy, well, he was a kid, really, so they've never given his real name. But he came forward and he told police, he said, I was out walking. He's like, I got picked up by this guy. And this guy had a cooler of beer in the back seat. And he's like, come on, I'm going to a party. And there's going to be girls there. And all of a sudden he's like, okay, that sounds cool. So he gets in the car. The guy gives him beers. The beers are laced with roofies, essentially. He takes the kid to a house where there are 2 women. They're trans women, although he doesn't tell the kid that.
Okay.
What ended up happening to the kid was that he goes to this house and then he starts feeling really sleepy. He falls asleep. He wakes up in the same house and he's been anally raped.
Damn.
So he reported it to the police. But he couldn't remember the dude's name. He kind of said what he looked like, but he couldn't remember where the house was. He couldn't really remember much about it because he had been drugged most of the time. So this is kind of all pointing to this Bevan Spencer von Einem person. So this Bevan guy, he's an accountant. He still lives with his mom.
Okay.
And he has been prescribed several of the drugs that were found in the kid's systems for sleep issues. He had insomnia, or so he says. They start looking into him and they're like, okay, well, back when the first victim was killed, Alan Barnes, we had an anonymous caller that called us and said, hey, Bevan Spencer von Einem killed that guy.
Right.
So they're like, we got to find that anonymous caller. So amazingly, they are able to track down this anonymous caller who first tipped them off to this dude.
All right.
And I don't think they've ever released his real name. They just call him Mr. B.
Huh. Must have something with their legal system. Yeah.
Well, now I think there was actually a book written about this by one of the detectives on the case. It was called Young Blood. And the guy might be named in there. Okay. But I'm not sure. Like every source I've seen online, because I haven't got to read that book yet. One of the main sources, and you guys should go listen to this after you're done with this, the Unresolved podcast actually did a 2-part show on this.
You were telling me about that guy. He's very thorough. He's like an expert on this case. Yeah. He loves this case.
And he had actually read the book Young Blood. So he got a lot of so I got a lot of details from his site. Right.
So shout out to him. If you guys
as well as, you know, I went through Wikipedia and all that. And there's also a really good documentary that was made by a crime channel in Australia. And it's called The Butchered Boys. And you can watch it on YouTube because that's how I saw it. So that's also a very good source of information. There's like interviews with the families and investigators and stuff. Okay. But yeah, so this Mr. B person, it's kind of weird because he keeps saying that he helped Bevan and they would drive around. Bevan has this cooler of beer in his back seat all the time and they drive around looking for young boys that they can entice into the car with the beer, or they say they're going to a party. There's all these girls at this party. Come on, we're going to take you to this party. So apparently Mr. B, he kind of almost sort of implicates himself in like helping with the abductions, but he always says that, oh, well, I wasn't there like when he killed anybody or anything like that, but I figured that that's probably what happened. Like I wasn't there, which I don't buy. Right. So now they're like, okay, well, this Bevan person, it's like, not only does he have prescriptions for all these drugs that have been found in this, he's admitted to knowing Neil Muir, the second victim, like having a sexual relationship with him. And he had been seen with various other victims at various other times. So they ask him about Richard Kelvin, the fifth victim, the 15-year-old. Now he says, I don't know that kid. I've never seen him. I was sick that week. I called, you know, and all this other stuff.
Right. That's him right there? Yeah. Oh, what a creeper.
Yeah, he's...
Look at that dude.
So then they ask him, they're like, okay, well, can we search your house and your cars and all that? And he says, okay. Although he did have 2 cars. And the cops are like, can we search both your vehicles? He's like, oh, I don't have that Ford Falcon anymore. I sold it to a family friend. Now, he sold it to this friend, which apparently he did because that friend came and testified at the trial or whatever, said, yeah, he did sell it to me. But the weird thing is that before he sold the car to the friend, he painted the trunk. Yeah. And that's it.
Now, this is a Ford Falcon, right? Yeah. You do realize that he's probably talking about the Ford Falcon XB. That was Mad Max's car.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
That was Mad Max's car. If you could get one of those in the United States, you're a wealthy man. Guys are looking for that car to make a Mad Max reproduction. No, fantastic car. That was an Australian Mustang, really. Yeah. That's what it was. Yeah, cool car. Anyway, shout out to Australia. Badass car. Falcon XB.
So, and then they're like, he said other weird shit, like when they were interviewing him, like they would ask him questions like, would you ever commit a murder? And he would say things like, no, because it's unethical. Yeah, which seems like a weird thing for an innocent person to say. Right. You know what I mean? It just sounds very strange. So at this point, they're like, okay, well, we think we have enough to at least proceed with the investigation against this guy. It's like, he said weird shit. We have this Mr. B person, like, saying he's been seen with all these people. He has these prescriptions. So they go and they search his house. Well, they search his car, and they're like, okay, well, there's the cooler of beer in the back seat, just like Mr. B said. Yeah. And then they go and search his house. They didn't find anything super weird, although he said, he's like, yeah, I have this one particular drug, but I don't have any Mandrax anymore. I don't have this, that, and the other thing. But when the cops searched his house, they found Valium, Mandrax, and Noctec on a little hidden ledge in his closet.
Man, this is the dude.
Like he was trying to hide it.
This is the dude, yeah.
Right. Well, I don't think no one's disputing that.
Yeah.
They just don't know if he was the only one.
Right.
So they have enough to like proceed and they're going to go on with the trial. So they're like, while they're waiting for the trial, the cops go and search his house again. They just tear everything out. And they're like, okay, now we need to collect all this evidence from this. So they took carpet fibers, they took fibers from the bed, they took everything. Interestingly, Richard Calvin, who was the 5th victim, he had been, like I said, he'd been kept for at least 5 weeks.
Right.
Now, on his clothing, not only did they find some of Bevan Spencer Von Einem's hair, they also found fibers from his carpet and from his bedspread from his house.
Got him.
Yeah.
Got it.
So they're like, okay, well, that's definitive. That proved he was there. So they told Bevan, they're like, okay, well, we found all this fiber evidence. And Bevan's like, oh, did I say I didn't know that kid?
Here we go.
On the night that he disappeared.
Yeah, I was hanging out with that guy.
I was hanging out with that kid.
Yeah.
He's like, that kid came to my house. He's like,
bullshit.
He's like, I was consoling him because he said that he was having problems at school and he was having problems because he thought he was bisexual and stuff, which his family was like, no, he wasn't. He had a girlfriend and everything. It's like he was straight.
All right. Let me tell you guys something. The best lie is the lie closest to the truth. If you're going to lie real close to the truth from the very beginning. You say, oh yeah, I knew all those kids. They were all gay. Used to see all those gay kids all the time. Used to hang out with them. Used to come over to the house. And then that probably could... I don't want to help these people get away with shit. Come on.
Well, the thing is, though, they're like, even if that had been the case,
Right.
they're like, look, it was 2 months from
Right.
between the time Richard Kelvin disappeared
Right.
to the time that his body was found.
Right.
They're like, if he had just come to your house and then left and someone else killed him,
Right.
fibers would not still be on his clothes
Right.
5 weeks later. They're
Right.
like, that just, it doesn't happen.
Right.
So obviously he was in his house. Obviously he was in his house before.
Dude. That's him.
Now, like I said, Bevan Spencer Von Einem, they could only get him for that murder because that was the only one that they had that fiber evidence that was definitive. Like the rest of them, yeah, he'd been seen with the other victims. Yeah, the drugs and everything like that. But there wasn't enough physical, solid evidence to pin the rest of the shit on him. They did try to pin 2 more murders on him.
Yeah.
They were going to take it to trial, but then the judge ruled, well, you can't use the similar murders thing from the Richard Kelvin case. You can't use that in this trial. And they were like, well, shit, we're fucked.
Right.
So they decided to withdraw the prosecution for the other 2 murders. So at this stage, Bevan Spencer Von Einem has only been convicted of the 1 murder, but they gave him life.
Right.
Because they're pretty sure he had something to do with the other ones too. However, the question is not if he was involved, because he totally was.
Right.
With at least those 5, if not more.
Dirty fucker.
But
Yeah.
how many other people were involved. The reason they call this the family murders is because they think that Bevan Von Einem was only one of this sort of loose cabal of sort of powerful people in South Australia that were basically raping boys. They were drugging and raping boys and sometimes killing them.
Wouldn't doubt it, because remember how in that other case where you had basically priests, Catholic priests in a Catholic school, pimping the girls out to the cops and local politicians.
Yeah.
Whenever somebody has access to young kids, they seem to be able to get powerful pervs involved in on it.
Yeah.
I bet you they use that as dirt, you know what I'm talking about? To control and manipulate one another, like a mafia.
It does seem like that.
Almost kind of like, like in the new James Bond series, like Spectre. They used their crimes to manipulate one another because they all got dirt on each other. Wouldn't surprise me.
Because, and another thing they said too was that Bevan Von Einem was not the sharpest tool in the shed.
Yeah. When you look at that dude.
Yeah, he was kind of a doofus.
Come on, man. Yeah.
And they're like, they don't think he was smart enough.
Right.
To have pulled all these off all by himself. And like you said, he was kind of an older, like he was an accountant. He would have got his ass kicked if he was by himself. Sure. By some of these 18-year-old, because some of these 18-year-old kids were like big athletic kids, So there must have been other people involved. And, not only the thing with Richard Kelvin and people hearing multiple voices when he was being abducted, but also in Alan Barnes's case where more than one person was seen in the car. So they think that there were several other people involved. And some of these other people, there's one guy who is only known as Mr. R. He was a business owner, and they think that maybe he was involved. He was kind of known as, he had a business that was 2 stories. And then on the second story, there was this room that was marked private, and all that was in there was a mattress on the floor.
Yeah.
And no one was really allowed to go in there. Right. And they said now he was well known around town for like every lunch hour, he would go cruise around the bars like looking for boys and shit like that. So he didn't really make a secret.
There's weird shit going on in this world. I mean, right now, second in command of the Vatican is under... Do you know he's being tried? He's being tried for trafficking over 1,000 boys. I mean, it's like the Vatican. It's like the pedophile command base now.
Yeah.
What the fuck? And we all knew that shit was going on, even in the Catholic Church. But at that high a level, the second in command, right underneath the Pope, how long has that shit been going on? I bet you it's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, get back to the story.
All right, so you got Mr. R. Now, Mr. R also had a roommate who was a doctor, and his name was Stephen Woodards. And he actually ended up going to prison in 2011 for sexual assault.
Pedophile
on
stuff?
boys, yeah.
Pedos, yeah.
Stuff that he did in 81 and 82.
Leave those boys
So
alone.
they think that he might have been involved too.
They gotta leave these boys alone.
There was another guy that they think was in the group early on was this guy named Darren Stevenson. Now, he was a lawyer. Now, he got murdered by his teenage lover in 1979. But he was probably part of the loose cabal also. There was
and there's a connection between all these guys?
They knew each other. They ran in the same circles.
Okay, then what are the chances?
Exactly.
What are the chances? Of course they were doing this shit
Yeah.
together.
It's like, even if it wasn't, like, I don't think they had, like, fucking meetings or anything like that, but they for sure ran in the same circles.
It was a clique.
Yeah, they hung out in the same places. It was a scene.
It was a clique.
They were a bunch of older guys with money
Yeah.
that wanted to prey on young boys.
Dirty fuckers.
And and that's what they did. They would go and they would ply these boys with alcohol. They would drug them. They would rape them. Sometimes they would kill them.
Yeah, that sounds plausible.
Yeah. Now, the problem is that Mr. B, who, like I said, I don't know if he's ever been identified. I couldn't find his name, but apparently he was named in the book. They are not really sure. Like, a lot of the information came from him, and they think that he was super involved also because he seemed to know a lot about what Bevan was doing, even though he always says, oh, well, I wasn't there when anyone got killed. But he for sure was there for some of the abductions and the rapes and stuff. The weird thing is that he also, they're not real sure how seriously to take, like, some of the stuff he said checked out. But then he also said that Bevan Spencer von Einem was the guy that had kidnapped the Beaumont children, which we did a show about.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And also that he was the one who had kidnapped Joanne Ratcliffe and Kirsty Gordon from the Adelaide Oval in 1973.
Look, these dudes all knew one another, and they all had dirt on one another. I guarantee you, when they killed somebody, they told one another too.
Yeah.
You know they did.
Like, even if they weren't
Because
all there for every single thing.
They all knew because they all had leverage over each other. They couldn't tell.
Right.
They knew.
So, yeah. So, like I said, they started calling this the family. It's kind of like a loose cult. But as I said, Woodards, he got done for sexual assault. So he's in prison. Bevan Spencer von Einem is in prison. Other ones, not so much. And honestly, the first guy that they put on trial, Milhouse, for Neil Muir's murder, he got acquitted, but I kind of feel like he might have been involved too.
Right.
And they just couldn't try him again for that. I'm not saying he's dead now. He died a couple years ago in a nursing home. But I kind of feel like he might have been involved as well. But Bevan was put in prison in 1984. But I know it's kind of like people are like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory and stuff like that. But in this case, I think it's legit. No, I mean, all of these dudes knew each other.
Yeah, they knew.
And
that was a scene.
The creepy thing is that some sources say that there are as many as 12 guys that are suspected of being in on this ring. And if Bevan was responsible for those 5, and if he was responsible for killing the Beaumont children and the 2 girls that got kidnapped from the Adelaide Oval, which maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, Mr. B said he was, and some of his other shit checked out, then that would be 10 people for him. But, like, how many people did the other dudes kill?
These little cliques, these little cults that go out and rape and murder people are not as rare as people think that they are.
They're probably not.
These little things are appearing in the news today.
So I kind of feel like this might be the case where it's just a bunch of, they're doctors, lawyers,
that's the weird
magistrates.
Thing. That's the weird thing. They're like men of power.
There was like a TV presenter.
It's because no one would suspect them. And they have the power and the money.
Well, that's another thing.
To evade
right.
detection.
Well, I think having money is kind of important because they can, I guess it's easier for them to like hide their activities.
Yeah.
Because I think and I don't remember if Mr. B said this or if there was another source that said this, that Bevan had like rented an apartment for the specific purpose of like taking the victims there.
It's like natural selection. The guys that don't have any brains or money or position in society get caught real early.
Yeah.
The ones that do can do it for a long time, and they can recruit others of their kind. So then they become like a mafia of pedophiles.
Which is what this sounds like.
Right, yeah.
And so the case was actually reopened in 2008, and they've been trying to link some of the other suspects with DNA. At the moment, other than Bevan, who was already in prison, they're looking at 3 suspects specifically.
Yeah.
Suspect number 1, this is Mr. R. Suspect 2 is Stephen Woodards. And there was another suspect also that's Mr. B, who, as I said, has never been named. Those are the 3 main suspects. They think that there might be a bunch more, though. Actually, this has gone way, way, way over time.
It's okay. Everybody's enjoying the time, and everybody's made a drink, and they're along with us. I mean, you know, I'm on my 2nd tequila sunrise. Jenny hasn't even finished her first.
That's because I'm talking.
Talking too much.
I'm talking too much to drink.
I'll tell you what, though. Tequila has a very unique effect on the human metabolism. my face feels red.
It is red.
It is red?
Yeah.
That's not.
Well, it does make you like warm.
Makes
like
you
my face
warm,
is starting to get warm. I've only drunk like half of one.
Very nice, very nice. If you guys have never tried a tequila sunrise, it's Tom and Jenny approved. You can hear the ice. Hear the ice?
Yeah, there it is. But yeah, another thing that I wanted to mention, and this turned up, I'm imagining that this comes from the book called Youngblood, which is about this case. The website of the Unresolved podcast, he mentions it as well. In 2014, there was this guy named Trevor Peters, and he had passed away. And he was very into the gay scene at the time, like in the late 70s or early 80s. And his family were going through his things, and they found a diary. And in the diary, he was talking about all of these people.
Yeah.
He was talking about Bevan von Einem. He was talking about Alan Barnes. He said in the diary that Bevan Spencer von Einem had spoken to his hairdresser about kidnapping Alan Barnes.
Yeah.
And he also named a bunch of other suspects in the ring.
Yeah, and before this, you know, to our listeners out there, what we're talking about here, this is not the gay scene. We have gay friends. Some of them in the gay bondage scene. They are not like this. This is not fucking normal.
No, these are just fucked up people.
Yeah, you can't really, like, gay people are not like this. Straight people aren't like that. Straight people don't go out and molest little girls. This is just a weird shit that happens. This is a ring of murderers, really.
Yeah, it's like, I didn't really want to, I didn't want to give anybody the impression that it's like, you know what I mean?
This isn't normal
This isn't normal behavior for anybody.
If our friend Toby found out about some shit like this, he would fucking kill you.
Well,
he would kill those dudes. Yeah.
Well, and honestly, I think the same thing applied at the time, because in the gay scene at the time, it was, you were looked at askance if you went after like little teenage boys and stuff. Yeah. People thought that was weird, you know, and creepy and gross.
Yeah.
So it's like, even at the time, they were weirdos. Like people thought they were weirdos.
And, you know, we got gay fans. So, you know, we got gay fans, gay listeners. And just to our straight listeners who may be young and don't really understand what the gay scene is about, it is nothing like that. I mean, you want to have a good time, you go to the fucking gay bar. Me and Jenny go to gay bars all the time. That's where the good music's playing.
Well, yeah, true. But yeah, this was just these are a bunch of messed up old guys with money. Yeah. Who just got off on having power.
Yeah, and murdering
over
people. Yeah.
Teenage boys.
Yeah.
And like I said, most of it didn't even, it was basically just crimes of opportunity. I mean, look at that little 14-year-old kid. He was just walking to the mall to visit his friend, and they just fucking snatched him.
You could have gangs of old straight guys doing the same thing.
Well,
to
they do.
Underage girls. They got that also.
They got that also.
It has nothing to do with your orientation. It's just these are fucking murderers.
Yeah, these are just crazy-ass people. And like I said, I think it would be good if at some point, like I said, they're investigating more people now since the case has been reopened, and they have DNA from the time, so they're trying to link more people to it. But as of this recording, Bevan Spencer von Einem is the only one that's in prison, and he's only in prison for one of the murders. Right. Even though they're pretty sure he did the other 4, but they are still classified as unsolved just because they didn't have enough to pin it on. Yeah. And like I said, there were a bunch of other dudes that they think might have been involved too, but I don't need to go into all that because this is already long enough.
Yeah.
But, so this is kind of rambling, but this was like a huge case and there's so many different tendrils. I didn't even mention like the Truro murders, which took place like shortly before this that was women.
Our show really is based around introducing these cases to our subscribers. We tend to be as complete as we possibly can, but some of these cases are so huge, man. You could get off into them for months. Getting the information on them. But I think this is a good introduction to this case.
Yeah, and like I said, if you really want a lot more in-depth detail about this case, Unresolved podcast, he did a 2-parter. It's almost 2 hours long about this case, and he just and also he did like a huge write-up of it on the blog, which is unresolved.me/the family murders. He wrote out the whole script like on his blog, so you can read it or you can listen to it. And there's also a really good documentary called The Butchered Boys. It's an Australian crime show, and it's about 48 minutes long, and it's like a documentary about the case too. So that's on YouTube if you want to go check that out. But yeah, this is like it's a fascinating case. And I got interested in it, like I said, when I was researching the Beaumont children disappearance, which we did a show about a few episodes ago, and someone subsequently requested that I do it. And it seems like it's lesser known in the United States. I feel like, even though it's fucked up and crazy, but so we'll end now because we're just going on a long time, and we're both like getting kind of.
It's time to drink some more.
It's time to drink some more.
It's Saturday night.
Yeah, it's Saturday night, and it's getting to a point where it's like, let's go drink and
lay up in a bed and watch horror movies.
We did the same thing last night, and here's the funny thing. Tom says to me this morning, he's like, because I got pretty hammered last night.
Yeah, well, so weekends,
It's Friday night.
It's the American way.
I don't really drink during the week.
It's the American way, It's
Friday,
it's a holiday season.
Yeah, Friday and Saturday night I'm going to drink.
Yeah.
But so he says to me this morning, he wakes up and says, there's something to be said for just sitting in bed drinking.
Yeah.
Because, at one point, like I was watching Mystery Science Theater, and I was so drunk that I just said, "Fuck it," I just fell asleep.
Yeah, and she blamed me.
I didn't blame you.
You were like,
I don't even know what I don't remember what I was saying. I just got really, really sleepy all of a sudden. I'm like, it looks like I should just lay down. Yeah. But you're like, it's kind of nice because you can be really drunk. You
have to drive home or anything.
You don't have to go anywhere. You're just already in bed. And you can just be like, fuck it.
You're ready to sleep.
Yep, you just put your head down and fall asleep. It was really nice.
Baby Cookie jumping up and witnessing this. What is wrong with these people? Why are they sleeping?
Yeah.
That's our cat. Yeah.
She woke me up at 6:30 this morning.
Yeah, man, that cat.
Well, I can't be mad at her, though, because she's too cute.
She's more monkey than cat.
She is very monkey-like.
Yeah, she's more monkey than cat-like.
Yeah. She climbed up. I was laying on my side, and she climbed up on my side and, flopped.
Yeah.
Over my side, and then started doing that little making biscuits thing.
Yeah,
like
with claws.
With her claws, on the other side of the blankets.
Making bread or making biscuits.
Yeah, that's what she's doing. She's so cute.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up then.
All right, so that'll do it for episode 93. Hope you enjoyed this supersized true crime episode. And remember, if you like true crime, check out my book, The Faceless Villain. Bah.
You must said Villian.
Villian.
Okay.
Check out my book, The Faceless Villain. Volume 1 is out, and Volume 2 will be out this summer, I promise. Also, be sure to check out our latest movie review, which is Phantasm 2. Mm-hmm. And check out our Zazzle store, which is...
Blackula and Blackula Scream will be coming soon.
Yeah, that should be out on Friday.
Yeah.
Check out our Zazzle store at zazzle.com/13 o'clock. We have shirts...
We'll be all right.
I know.
No.
We have shirts and a tote bag, and also check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/13 o'clock podcast, or go to our blog, which is 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a link in the sidebar to a PayPal account if you'd like to make a one-time donation. And I think that's all of the shout-outs, isn't it?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it is.
We'll see you guys next time then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.